So we're going to discuss three particular experiments today. The first one is experiment one, where the hypothesis is that the consumption of probiotics can reduce anxiety in people with eating disorders. And this certainly received a lot of attention online on the Galileo platform. Now, what's interesting about this is there have been some studies in mice that show that probiotics can have a very large effect on anxiety and on mouse models of depression. So the idea that it might work in people is certainly very interesting and relevant. And the idea is that communication through the gut-brain axis, which we know in mice can be affected by probiotics, might hold true in people as well. So this was a pretty well-designed experiment. The idea is that consumption of probiotics can be manipulated reasonably easily by either taking or not taking probiotics. One thing that we do know from those animal experiments and also from clinical trials in people, though, is that different probiotics have very different effects physiologically and probably psychologically as well. In fact, John Cryan, who's at the University of Cork, who's a leader in producing what are called psychobiotics, which are probiotics that affect the mind, has emphasized how important knowing what strain of bacteria, not just what species, but what strain, is really critical for this kind of thing. In the same way that you might want to know not just whether you have a dog in your house, but whether it's a Chihuahua or a Great Dane. And the same sort of variability occurs in microbial species. So one thing that might be really helpful here is to say not just whether you consumed probiotics, but also what kind you consumed at the level of resolution that you can. And also how much you consumed, because the dose can also be very important. And then the self-reported anxiety scale certainly seems very reasonable, although one thing that's often been seen in studies of anxiety is that it can vary a lot during the day. So rather than a single measure that might be at one time point that might be subject to quite a lot of fluctuation, you might want to instead measure anxiety many times over the day and take an average rather than just measuring it once. So that certainly looks like an interesting and valuable experiment, and we'll be very interested to see what the outcome is.